are listed here, and so I'll begin by asking one of our members to approve the minutes from our previous school committee meeting on January 14th. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Public comment. John.
Pardon me. There's a number of us that'll speak, but I'll start. A number of us who are here from the high school. My name is John Dixon. I teach social studies at Monomoy High School here. We're here tonight to ask you to present the towns with a budget that will not include staff reductions. We believe the proposed elimination of 7 positions at the high school will undermine the new program being implemented and reduce the level of services and success at the high school. Our program is based on several years' efforts to create and provide a wide range of courses in order to offer our students a comprehensive education. The implementation this year has had its bumps, but we're proud of what's been accomplished and are looking forward to see how we can build on this. The average class size at Monomoy is about 18 and a half, but most teachers have at least one class over 25, and some have classes over 30. Our student projection for next year is for around an additional 50 students, plus any added school choice students, of which we had more than expected this year. The graduating senior class is small, around 90, compared to the incoming 8th grade, which is around 140. Similar growth is expected for the following 2 years. Cutting staff by around 10% when student population is growing by around 10% seems on its face unwise. Cutting staff will inevitably lead to departments to reducing programs, as departments will have to focus on core classes. This can be expected to impact school choice. We know there are families watching the budget process and this staff cut proposal before deciding whether to apply or attend next year. And this would undermine any expected savings from the staff cuts. Related to this, I believe the proposal to alter the schedule, contractual implications aside, is a separate matter and shouldn't be tied to the budget proposal. Going from 8 to 7 classes would have a negative impact, I believe, independent of the staff cuts, on program offerings, especially in the arts. The arts program is one of our greatest strengths, and if students are forced to reduce their number of electives, I believe that's going to end up impacting the arts programs. And that will also further erode school choice students. I just don't think that should be tied to the budget and should be considered as a separate question. But back to the main issue, we implore you to go to the towns with a level services budget. Harwich in particular must be reminded of the implications of last year's budget. Facing a potential shortfall, the district used all $1 million of its school choice funds. This decision set up a fiscal cliff that we're currently facing. It would seem to require a budget override this year. If there was no intention on the part of Harwich to support an override, then the school choice money should have been spread out over 2 or 3 years as the E&D funds accumulate. This would have meant cuts or an override last year, but a much smaller one than what we're facing this year. Based on their request for the school to spend down the school choice money last year, they should be asked to support an override this year. We think the school committee needs to take this step to remain true to the new district's vision that we've all worked so hard on for the last few years. If not, that vision will be eroded, and the hoped for savings may well evaporate in the process, putting us in a worse hole next year. It may prove impossible to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for the volume, John. As you notice, we don't have our mic system set up yet, so feel free.
My name is Janice McGrory, and I'm a math teacher here at the high school, specifically 8th grade math. And I would like to introduce Jamie Rushnack, who is here to give the students' opinion on what's going on here at the school. So I'd like to introduce Jamie.
Hi, everyone. Monomoy Regional High School, as of right now, has a variety of electives for students to choose from. The variety of electives allows students to choose fun classes that they will enjoy. Also, students who are close to graduating or have ideas of what they might want to be when they are older might want to choose an elective that can support their dreams and help get them one step closer to deciding which college they want to go to, what they want to major in, all the big life questions. If Monomoy Regional High School is unable to provide to these students, students might want to leave and find a school that will. People have spent so much money on building this school, and now there is no money to offer exciting extracurricular classes. It is not the building that makes the school, it is the students and the teachers. But most importantly, it is what the students are learning. Cutting down on classes cuts down on learning, which will ultimately make us a worse school, no matter how fancy or large our school is. Monomoy should have thought about this earlier, but now that it is too late, I ask that you at least try to find the extra funds to keep the teachers. We all want what's best for our school, and what's best for Monomoy right now is to keep the electives and staff. We need them. If we cut programs and get rid of teachers, we won't learn much about those specific subjects. We are a school. We need to learn as much as we possibly can, or else we may not be ready to face life. We, as students, deserve to get an education, and that means keeping programs and teachers. Teachers are our mentors. Let them teach us. Keep this letter in mind when you're rearranging schedules. And finally, I don't think that you should cut school programs and staff. This school is supposed to be the best of all the Cape. Without this amazing staff, many wouldn't want to be a part of Monomoy. We need these programs to bring our school closer and better as one. If we were to cut opportunities for our future, it would stink. Okay, if you need money, have a bake sale or something else. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie.
Good evening. My name is Rick Gifford. I am the parent of two children in the Monomoy school system. I've been a Harwich resident for the last 18 years, and currently I'm the director of guidance here at the high school. I'd like to give you just some of my thoughts about what these proposed cuts could look like and the impact that they could have. First, I want to take you back to the beginning of this school year. We were projected to enroll 580 students, is about what we expected to open with in September. In the last few weeks of August and early September, we had over 50 students enroll that we weren't planning for. They just came. Many of those students were school choice, but many of them actually moved to this town, or our towns of Chatham and Harwich. I had one family that I was working with over the summer. They moved here from Vail, Colorado, specifically to come to this school because of the offerings that we have at this school. So people have made a significant move to come here. We ended up enrolling, we peaked at just over 640 students. We had some in and out, and now we're settled at about 625 students. If we go back another year to 2013, Harwich Middle School actually had a very similar situation happen where they had about 50 new students enroll within the first month or so of school. So we're looking at, within a 12-month period, nearly 100 students that nobody was expecting to have come into the district. That increases the number of sections you have to offer, that increases the staff size that you have to have. What's happened with many of the students who've enrolled recently, some of them have come needing some significant services in English language learners or special education. Those are driven, those really drive the staff in those areas because we have to provide services for those students. There's really no skimping around that. Bring us back to this year. With the staff that we had in place, we really weren't able to adequately provide courses for every single student here. By that I mean we're currently students here are taking 8 classes. We had a staff with the electives and the core offerings that we had that left close to 300 students at one point without all 8 classes full. We had to scramble. Students now do have full schedules, but a lot of those classes are non-instructional classes. They're school service classes, and other areas where students are doing good work and having a meaningful experience, but they're not in instructional areas. And that's a real concern when we're looking at growing again next year. And the number that's been going around is 666. But as the last few years have shown, we don't really know. We could have another 40 or 50 students show up on our doorstep in the last weeks of summer and early fall, and that has happened for the last 2 years in a row. Cutting the staff with more students coming in immediately seems problematic. Right now, let me give you a few examples. We currently have 5 sections of Spanish 1. It was about 125 students are taking Spanish 1 right now. That's a full-time teaching position equivalent just for Spanish 1. We have a 2-year foreign language requirement. We can presume those students who are taking Spanish 1 this year will all be taking Spanish 2 next year. So that's 1 full-time Spanish teacher for Spanish 1, another full-time Spanish teacher for Spanish 2. We only have 2 Spanish teachers. Spanish 3, Spanish 4, Spanish 5, AP Spanish. I don't know how we could offer those courses in the near future or even further out. It's a similar situation in science right now, where if there were a cut in science, we would really only be able to offer a very bare-bones science program. We'd probably lose our electives that are very popular in marine science, forensics, courses like that the students really enjoy, and they're very good, solid courses. We may not be able to do that. PE and health is another area. Last year, Chatham High School had 2 full-time PE and health teachers. Harwich High School had about 3.5, serving a total population of around 500 students. We lost 2 PE teachers, so we still have just over 3 PE teachers serving a population of over 600 students. And now we require students to take PE and health at every level. We weren't able to offer that this year. We had to waive and make provisions for the seniors for their health classes. These are just a few examples of how reducing the staff, it's really unthinkable at this point. We're growing. Instead of cutting positions, really we should be looking at adding positions. Almost every department has needs that won't be addressed by cutting staff this year. Continuing to add the students, we're probably, I think that 666 number is pretty conservative. I wouldn't be surprised if it were significantly higher than that. And with a reduced staff, I don't see how we can offer the programs that we even currently offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Hi,
Hi,
you want to introduce yourself?
my name is Shauna Speakman, and I'm a 9th grader in Monomoy High School. So recently, I received news about the schedule change, and a lot of people in the school aren't happy about it, as demonstrated. I realize that it is because of the budget and other things, but we'd be losing an elective, which affects many people and their needs, including those in the fine and performing arts, one of our biggest attractions here at our school. In response to that, I started a petition. So far, we have around 195 signatures. The petition was started about 3 weeks ago, but due to snow days, I've only had around 7 or 8 days to compile this. And we've already got almost 2/3 of the school. So, as for what happens if we don't change it, I don't have an idea yet. But I'm still working with some adults and my peers on figuring that out. But it just doesn't seem fair to change the schedule and take away opportunities when we've just built a brand new school made for new opportunities. Thank you.
Good job, Shauna.
Hi, I'm Matt Brown. I'm the head of social studies at the high school. I too would like to address the proposed staffing cuts on academic programs at the high school. Because of contractual requirements, once you know the departments which will see reductions, the effects on programs of cutting a position in any given department are predictable. For instance, the loss of a world languages teacher will eliminate all the classes in Mandarin. So once the departments targeted for cuts are identified, which I hear will be soon, The committee can judge for itself what will happen to programs that were developed in each department during regionalization. Another factor is predictable too. There is a large cohort of special education students entering the high school next year. They will require small classes in order to be serviced. So this committee, in overseeing budget reductions, will be overseeing specific cuts to programs whose effects on school choice will become all too clear. In the social studies department, for instance, a teacher now assigned to teach grades 9 through 12 will have to be reassigned to fill the vacancy in the 8th grade. This will mean that there will be no 8th grade AP history teacher class next year for the current 8th grade pre-AP history students, and the feeder program for this AP program will have to end. There will also likely have to be cut to at least one other AP offering, either AP psychology or AP US history. Simply put, you can't have a lot of small classes with fewer staff, and you can't cut the smaller classes in special education. You have to cut the other ones, and many of those will be AP classes. This is likely to happen in any department that sees cuts. The electives that serve the smallest number of students will need to be cut to offset the numbers in the other classes, to accommodate students with special needs, and to prevent the other lectures from growing too large. Or some of the AP classes can be scheduled, but other classes will grow beyond the current cap. Either way, as you reduce the available choices, you also reduce the rigor of the high school program. At the high school, from the standpoint of public relations and school choice, cutting these programs now would be a disaster. It would signal students and their parents that the commitment necessary to build on what has been done to create an outstanding program will not exist in the future. The students and parents who demand rigorous, small classes will seek them elsewhere. This will likely snowball, and the high school will lose more students, and they will take their money with them. And we will be back here again discussing how to fund programs, again next year, or how to cut them. It is up to you to prevent a narrow focus on the bottom line this year from creating more crises a year or two from now. For parents and students interested in sending their children to see Harwich Town Government destroy an excellent program that's begun to fulfill its promise, they will certainly lose faith. Thank you.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Good evening. Lisa Forte Doyle. I teach
Lisa.
English, creative writing, and African American voice. A course, by the way, that was brand new this year. I created it this summer. I believe it's been a great success. And considering we have such a diverse school, and I think I can say that because I live in Brewster. I've had kids at Cape Cod Academy, at kids at Nauset High School. I've been taught at Chatham. Now I'm here in Monomoy. We have definitely one of the most diverse schools, I think, on all of Cape Cod, not even just the Lower Cape. It's something to celebrate. It's something to enrich. And to lose a course such as African American Voice or the Multicultural History and Film, which is another course I hope to teach, it would really be heartbreaking. I do have a couple of notes. Considering I live in Brewster, I went to Nauset High School's parent-teacher night in September. And a teacher there, the Latin teacher at Nauset High School, said during the intro to the families, "Well, I got to thank Monomoy." And of course, I'm like, where's this coming from? I got to thank Monomoy. Nauset High School's got Chinese. I got to thank Monomoy. Look at these smart boards. We got a great new field out there. I got to thank Monomoy for that. I have never, after 22 years of teaching in Chatham High School, I've never felt so proud to be in the Harwich-Chatham system, to be a Monomoy Shark. It was so great sitting there and thinking, yeah, baby, that's right. You can thank Monomoy. We have upped the goals here. We are now a threat. We haven't been a threat for years. We've bled kids to the Nauset system, and I'm tired of bleeding. I'm very proud of the work we've done. The teachers have worked all summer. The teachers are here till, we have a history teacher who lives in Sandwich. I swear to God, he must have a cot in his classroom, because he doesn't leave until 5, and he's always here before I am in the morning. I don't know when he's ever home in Sandwich. But we work very hard because we have a vision. We came together a few years ago, and we had a vision. And some people didn't like that vision, and they left. And I always said, good riddance, because change is good, and change can be very powerful, and we've done it. If we start going backwards and regressing, we're taking away all that we created. And most of that is the choices, okay? I believe that right now, we're sort of equal with a lot of other Cape schools regarding choices. We are now. Not Chatham, not Harwich. Monomoy High School is now about equal with our choices. And we have created some courses for a 21st century school. We have diversity in our literature, as I said before, robotics. We have a global outlook in our languages. I have asked kids over the years when I go to Nauset events, and I know they're from the Harwich Chatham systems, I ask them, what are you doing at Nauset? How can we get you back? And they always say, well, you know, I wanted more choices, whether it be in sports, whether it be in the sciences, the AP classes, the languages. They wanted more choices. And that's where we bled. And if you cut teachers, obviously we've got to cut choices. And I know that there's a budget, and I know money is very important. Of course it is. But can we be creative? Can we let the people speak? Can we go to the parents and the community? And if they want a cheap school, well then I got to go along with it. But for us to just give in and say, well, you know, let's not try to fight. Let's just accept a cheaper school and go backwards, I think would be a real shame. And I would be, after 22 years of teaching for the kids in Chatham, I'd be really upset and I'd be very sad. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Rich Houston, history. I moved here 21 years ago. I don't think I've missed a town meeting, ever. And I have a lot of confidence in the voters of the town of Harwich. It's very rare for something to be presented with the kind of arguments you've heard tonight, with the passion that I know many people on this committee and in the leadership team feel, and to have the town meeting and the voters say no. Anyone who engaged in the process of the whole regionalization knows that there were some very loud voices that opposed many different stages of that. And I'm speaking as a Harwich resident from the Harwich side of things. Voices that didn't want to regionalize, voices that didn't want to build a building, voices that have opposed other financial initiatives in the past. They almost always lose when we go and ask. Part of my concern in what's been unfolding over the last few weeks is that I guess I'm here tonight to say, let's ask. Let's not go to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen and make the cuts without asking the voters. I have confidence in the voters in the town of Harwich. And on the issue of, I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have already mentioned, but I do want to say this. I wouldn't be speaking here if I didn't think that the cuts were going to have an impact. But I also know, from having watched so closely over the last few years, all the trials and tribulations of creating what we have, that those folks and the others that they represent have gone above and beyond the call of duty for years to get us to where we are now. And no matter what happens with this, those professionals over there will, you can be assured, will be doing whatever can be done under the circumstances to best serve the kids in this community, and they will do a hell of a job of it. But we don't need to put more barriers in the way of achieving those goals. I forget which of the town meetings it was, whether it was the original vote on regionalization or the vote on the building, but at one point I got up at town meeting and I was trying to share the idea that I think I used the word, we have to create a buzz in the competitive environment that now exists in education, if we want the elbow of the cape to be successful. I think we've created a buzz, and I want to keep the buzz going. And finally, the last thing I'd like to mention, this is just to provide maybe a more personalized approach to this. When we had the staff meeting where we were first discussing what the possible issues were regarding the budget, before we got into the budget, we had, as we do at our meetings, a couple of staff members do presentations to their colleagues on sharing some ideas and skills and technology. And one of the people that did the presentation that day, just by coincidence, was one of our younger teachers who over the last few years in that teacher's department has taught every single core class from the 8th grade to the 12th grade. Has gone and taken training for advanced placement teaching when we as a district decided we wanted to continue offering more advanced placement offerings. Has started to teach advanced placement. Is involved in coaching 2 or more different sports teams, and was there that day. This was a younger teacher, who I'm talking about, of course, because given the cuts, this is the type of professional that's at risk, was there sharing with some of the more mature members of the staff some of the technology skills that this teacher has been using that have really made a difference. And so the juxtaposition of talking about the budget in the immediate aftermath of having a person that's really making a difference with kids in our district was a little bit too tough to take without going and asking the voters first. So thank you for your time.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Michelle Pelletier. I am one mom of one child who has gone to Harwich Elementary, and I'm here for a completely different reason than what everyone has so spoken about so eloquently. I'm here because my son was approved for school choice to go to Chatham Elementary by the superintendent, and I received a letter approved for it. And I had gone through all the steps that are laid out for our district as to what you have to do. And then soon after the letter was received, I had begun the process, and then I was told by the superintendent that the ship has passed and that we don't want any more change. You know, I have to say, I was told by so many people to not come here. Don't come. You're just going to piss people off. This isn't about anybody making anybody mad. It's not about creating a more challenging dynamic between you and I. It's really about transparency. It's not personal. But there is a confusion in the school choice process in our district, and I feel as if my family has fallen into the gutter of what the challenge is. Maybe we all tried our best. But what's happened is any discussion that I wanted to have around, wait a second, what just happened? I was in the process of working through this school choice and setting up my son, and then to have it cut away, I still just don't understand. From what I heard from the principals, they did not know that the change had happened and that the superintendent had changed his mind and said no more school choice mid-year. And yet I had just received a letter stating your son has been approved for school choice. it can seem a minor issue compared to everything you all are talking about. But all the moms know, when you know something is right for your child, you have to stand up for it. And I know, and I feel strongly, that one community is a better fit for my family than another. That doesn't negate Harwich at all. I teach after-school classes at Harwich. I have on and off for years at many schools in town. I would like to see there be an open discussion. If there is going to be a change midstream, I think that the administration team needs to be brought on board. I think their teams need to be brought on board, and everyone, and then the families need to know what the rules are, because I did everything I was supposed to do, and then it was taken away. I would still love to see my son's pre-approved school choice happen. He has entered the Chatham after-school program, and we really are just waiting. Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody? To all of our staff that came out tonight, I thank you all for your words and your directions to us. And what we're dealing with is a very, very obvious, serious matter, and we are attempting to do the best we can, and we value your input. I didn't want to mix metaphors. Thank you, parent, for coming. I would have had a pause. Okay, we'll move on.
Terry? Could-
Yes, Frank.
Would it be appropriate for us to respond as we feel?
Well, I think tonight was really primarily for us to listen, but, feel free.
I just want to talk for a minute. First, I want to ask, is there anybody here who came to speak on behalf of, like, the Taxpayers Association, or anybody who's here that wanted to speak in terms of having the budget reduced and things of that nature, who somehow feels too intimidated to speak tonight? Is there anybody here? I just want to be sure that everybody gets heard from that wants to get heard from. One thing I share with Mr. Houston, I guess didn't know that till tonight, I think we both moved here the same year, and I haven't missed a town meeting myself in all that time. I was on the Finance Committee for 10 years. I've been on pretty much all of the school committees associated with regionalization, and I was struck by a couple of things that I think are worth pointing out. It was a couple of years ago that the school committee presented a budget which was resulting in a request or a decision by the Harwich Selectmen and the Finance Committee to require it to be paid by a significant override. And I happened to have given the speech that night on behalf of the school committee in support of the override. And I spoke at town meeting many times as a member of the Finance Committee and many times as a member of the school committee. But what struck me the most about that night, when I was speaking, and I looked out and I realized there was no room for another person in that room. In fact, for the first time I was aware of, we had to have television screens in other rooms. There were thousands of people who showed up that night at town meeting in support of the override. I've never seen that kind of turnout at any town meeting in 22 years. I point that out to remind people that this is your budget. This is not this budget of the, I'm speaking to Harwich people and Chatham people, not just teachers. I realize some of you whom don't live in this town, but in terms of the people who do live in this town and in Chatham, remember that it is your budget, it's your money. It's not up to the Finance Committee, it's not up to the chair of the selectmen, it's up to you. And you've made your voices heard tonight. I don't know, is there anyone here at all from any member of the press? Is a Chronicle here, or the Cape Cod Times, anybody here? I don't see them here. I understand some people are planning to come to the selectmen's meeting on Monday night, the Harwich Selectmen's meeting. All the newspapers will be there Monday night. So I would invite you to speak as well at Monday night, because not only will you have an opportunity to be heard by the selectmen, and I think it's a joint meeting with the finance committee as well, right? But your voices will be heard and they'll be published, because the word, I'm sure you believe that to a great extent you're preaching to the choir here. It's not necessarily us you need to convince. It's the people who are going to come to town meeting and vote on the budget, and if necessary, if it comes to the point of needing an override, even more importantly, the people who are going to show up to vote in the ballot box. It's been a long, understanding of anybody who attends town meeting. It's very hard for people at town meeting to say no to the school department. It's a lot easier for them to say no when they vote in the ballot box. So I invite you to get your voices heard. No decisions have been made yet. There's been a number of presentations by the superintendent, business manager to both towns. This committee has not voted on any budget whatsoever yet. So, we are listening, we do care, but most importantly, the selectmen are 5 votes. The finance committee is 8 or 9 votes. There are thousands of voters in this town who can get what they want if they're willing to pay for it. So please get the word out, attend town meeting, do what you have to do so that your voices are heard.
Scott, do you have recognitions?
I do. In terms of recognitions, let me first just start with what was sort of the obvious over the last week. We've had a little bit of snow and some bad weather, and in fact, I've never had this much snow and this much bad weather in one slug in my educational career. And I was told, moving to Cape Cod, that it doesn't snow and I didn't need the snow blower. Okay, there were some lies.
Those people from Vail, did they decide that this was the place to move to?
But I really want to express deep appreciation for our custodial crews and for our town's DPW staff. Because I'm now at least one of the few superintendents on the Cape who still has a snow day. We have an awful long winter left, but we really had a lot. There was a lot of work that went in to being able to have us open and ready for Friday. So I really thank the crews. They were here as the snow was falling. They were trying to keep up with it as best they could, and they came in on those days. In fact, they drove to many of our schools only to find that they couldn't get into the schools to park anywhere to start digging out. So they did a lot of travel back and forth just to go and get us dug out. And again, I thought the towns did a great job given what Mother Nature dealt us. So thank you there. And just last, in terms of recognitions, for our staff that came here to speak tonight, I greatly appreciate hearing your voices. And I know I'm in an interesting situation in terms of a budget I have to present. But I also believe that it's a democracy and we all have a voice to share. And I really am just blown away by hearing from Jamie and Shauna. I mean, that's what we want our graduates here at Monomoy prepared to do, to be able to come and present in public, and that sort of skill set in the long haul is what we're after. And I think that's what we want to see in every graduate. So that's those special moments. And for me, Jamie and Shauna, thank you for your presentations.
Lanny, student representative.
All right, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, I promise. Okay, so first of all, we had a nice vacation last week with 3 days off. That's why it's pretty short and sweet tonight. Tomorrow is our last day of midterms, so that's exciting. As well as our first mock trial. We're traveling to Barnstable tomorrow with Mr. Russell and Mr. Bates. Yeah.
That's a different Mr. Russell, by the way, just for the...
Right, sorry.
Also, the first edition of the Monomoy newspaper came out, the Shark Tales, and it was very well received. Also, this weekend is the All Cape Music Festival. So we have different students from all over the Cape, and Monomoy was the school chosen to have all these kids come here. So everyone has been rehearsing really hard, as well as Grease rehearsals. I think last Friday they had a 6-hour rehearsal. So they're really going strong to make up for all those snow days, you know. Also, Kaylin, the other representative, senior representative, wanted me to mention that the college acceptances are coming in, and they're featured up on the wall in the guidance area. So that's exciting. And she also wanted me to mention that they're selling carnations for Valentine's Day, so you can send them to all your friends. Also, the junior class is hosting a prom fashion show on February 26th. And we have different stores from all over the Cape that have donated everything for the fashion show. So the tuxes, the dresses, the hair, the everything. So we're really grateful for that. And it is at 6 o'clock here on February 26th, and it's $5. So if anyone's interested. And finally, with February vacation approaching, we have 2 trips that are leaving the stand trip, and Kaylin said that it's the most people that have ever signed up to go. So, and stand is Students Take Action Now Darfur, a club at school, as well as the trip to Europe, Madrid, Paris, and Rome. Friday the 13th we leave. Not this coming Friday, next Friday. So that's all.
Short and sweet, Lanny. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's like a Patriot rolling rally. Middle school students, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Ross Martin. I'm a
Hi,
7th
Ross.
grader from Monomoy Middle School. I'm here to talk about the school store. Some Senate members went to Cape Cod Embroidery to place some orders for Monomoy gear. We have water bottles, winter hats, and some small backpack for gym clothes to be carried in. We even got a tour of the Cape Cod Embroidery. We also have tissues, hand sanitizer, school supplies, and some other fun items for the store. We'll also be doing a chocolate rose sale for this Valentine's Day. You can have 1 cent to show someone you care. Our profits will go to make sure everyone is included. We're all important at our school. And lastly, for me, Valentine and School Spirit wear a pink and red day for Friday, February 13th. Everyone's gonna be wearing that just to show spirit for the school.
Good job, Ross.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maddie Flaherty. I, like Ross, go to Monomoy Middle School. I'm in 6th grade. And today I want to bring to your attention that we are doing the St. Jude's Math-a-thon. And basically, St. Jude's is a research hospital that is helping people who have deadly diseases such as cancer, and their families will not receive a single bill. And we are raising money to help them find a cure. Also, Monomoy has wide varieties of sports such as basketball for the winter. In fall, we have soccer and field hockey, and for spring, we have track and field and tennis. And what did you say he's like the tech teacher? Yeah, okay, he's the tech teacher. His name is Mr. Newby, and he's starting a Young Engineers Club that's about to start next week? Yeah, it's starting next week. Also, there's a new drama production directed by Diana Toscano called Shrek Jr., and it's running from May 18th to 20th. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manny, good job. Lanny, do you see what you started? We're into reports and discussions, and we're going to reverse the order a bit. We're going to take item 3, the first one topic, fiscal 16 budget update.
Kitty, could I get you to flip us on? put some context on the budget, on the budget update. I know a number of people showed up to talk about the budget, and it's important to sort of understand some of the context here. I've gone around to each of the schools to talk to our staff about the budget that I'll be proposing as we go into our next meeting with the Harwich Selectmen and Finance Committee. The global context here is that this budget is $2.5 million above the constraints of Prop 2.5. And that's a lot for the taxpayers, and I can understand where some are approaching this. The staffing cuts that John started to talk about, and followed by the remaining teachers and students, amount in this. The punchline is there's 10 FTEs that are proposed to help close a gap. It's important to emphasize that even after closing the gap, the bottom or the last slide here has this budget still $825,000 out above the constraints of Prop 2.5. And so as I go into the selectmen's meeting on Monday, the important punchline behind this is there's to close that remaining $825,000. There's not an ability for us to go back and whittle away and take and say, okay, the increase in textbooks, a 1.5% increase in budget lines for textbooks next year, to reduce that, because it's already been reduced to get us to where we're at. That we're really left from this point on touching classrooms, touching staffing, and and the rough calculation there at roughly $50,000 an FTE to close an $800,000 gap. It's a lot, and that would be reductions above and beyond anything that I'm talking about today in terms of this attempt to narrow the budget gap. So that's just an important overlay here, and so the potential impact, when we talk about what if there was a need for an override, and what if an override were to fail. It's the 10 FTEs that are talked about in this discussion, plus the additional FTEs that would be needed to close the remaining roughly $1,000 gap. So that being said, this was a presentation Katie Arsenario, our business manager, and I were initially supposed to go and do at the end of January, before the first of several snowstorms that kept having this delayed. So what we wanted to do initially is put together a budget that was delivering the promise that we've talked about last year, to have a program that was better than what our two smaller school systems of Harwich and Chatham had individually, to have a program that had expanded opportunities, but to also put that program together in a way that was fiscally responsible. One of the key drivers here, and that's driving the conversations about what sort of staffing might we be able to afford to reduce, is to maintain, to make sure that we're maintaining a class size, or an average class size, that last year we discussed as a school committee of having class sizes of 18 plus or minus one student at the elementary school level, and 19 plus or minus two at the middle and high school. So within the reductions here, we could still maintain those averages at the various grade levels. If we go beyond the reductions that I talk about here, that guideline and program enhancement just go completely out the window. And I think that's what people need to understand as we discuss this. So I'll kind of zip through the first piece of this because the school committee and many have seen it again and again. We put forward initially when we went to our first meetings in Harwich, just what would a level service budget be? What would the budget look like that has no increase or that has no increase in staffing, that maintains the staffing that we currently have? So to run the school, it's $36 million operation. We had, as I mentioned, there's a $2.5 million increase that we're looking at for that. The number one line up there is deals with school choice funds. That last year in putting together the budget, we had school choice funds in a reserve account that we could go to so that we wouldn't have to go to the taxpayers last year. But we're also very clear in our budget presentations that those funds were going to run out, that you couldn't go to the kitty anymore. So that's the first $1 million up there. And then there's a whole series of other places, lines in the budget where you're seeing increases. And I want to kind of just emphasize here, budgets are dynamic. There are aspects to these numbers that are already obsolete. Behind the numbers here, when we have health insurance, a $324,000 increase in our budget for next year, that was predicated on an assumption that health insurance would only go up by 8%. Today we were told that our health insurance will be going up by 10% next year. So that number's now getting bigger. There's a lot of assumptions behind the budget at this point. We're assuming that the state aid is going to be the same from the state to the schools. But we have a new governor who's already sort of foreshadowing things are not good in terms of the state's revenues, and so how that's actually going to impact school budgets, that's to be determined quite some time from now. So this is sort of our best estimate of where things are going to be and what a potential shortfall is going to be based on assumptions and what we know today. So as I said, the school choice funding piece, that was something we were very clear with in past years or last year, and it's something that the towns had been doing as we went into regionalization, using more of the school choice monies that had been amassed over time to help offset the cost of school budgets for the taxpayers. So when it comes to school budgets ultimately come down to a bottom line of a operating assessment. The assessment is the bill that a regional school district sends to one town and the bill that they send to the other town. In the initial budget that we presented, we didn't use any of our excess and deficiency funds to offset the cost of that budget. We were very clear with the towns what our excess and deficiency had grown to. It had grown from our first year as a district from 0 to roughly $500,000, and from $500,000 to currently about $1.4 million. So in the initial iteration, we hadn't used excess and deficiency monies, which is a reserve account that we could go to. In the later edition or the later revision, we do. The other important thing to note when we have to calculate mathematically the assessment between the two towns is that there's an enrollment shift, that the percentage that each town is carrying for the budget is based on a 3-year rolling average of students attending the district, and there's a 0.65% increase in the number of Harwich students in Monomoy for next year than there was the previous year. So before you even get to a 2.5% increase for the town of Harwich, there's already a shift by 0.65% that direction. For the town of Chatham, it's a reduction. So those are that's one of the compounding factors in this budget challenge. So we get down to the bottom line of the budgets that we had initially talked about. We have what Prop 2.5 would allow. So Prop 2.5 would allow the school district, with the budget that we've had, to increase by $675,000. This budget to compensate for the lack of the school choice funds and to address the other factors that, in terms of budget growth, it's $2.5 million above and beyond what the constraints of Prop 2.5 could do. So we then went back in and met with each of the principals and did a lot of proverbial pencil sharpening to go through line by line in the budget and find where could we go and conceivably reduce costs so that we could narrow that quite substantial funding gap between the towns. So, all told, the pencil sharpening, we narrowed the gap by roughly $1 million. The bulk of that $1 million shows up in that first cell, that roughly $600,000. That's the staffing reduction that that people came and were talking about. So that's what the impact is to the 10 positions, and they discussed that the bulk of this happens at the high school. It does. There's roughly 6 FTEs at the high school, 3 roughly at the middle school, one at the elementary school. Is how it sort of roughly would play out across. So there are some things that I've talked at past school committee meetings about in terms of my recommendations on how we could go about narrowing the gap. One of the suggestions has been to look at Harwich Elementary School and to gradually start controlling the number of school choice students that are coming in at the kindergarten level in Harwich Elementary School, and gradually over the next several years pare Harwich Elementary School back from a 6-section per grade level elementary school to a 5-section, and maintain Chatham Elementary School at a 3-section. And part of the conversation behind that is, if we as a district do a great job, if we see families staying with us, and again, families staying with us is dependent upon what our program, what program we have in place here. If families stay with us, we actually can't afford to have 9 elementary sections at each grade level, because we would have more students in the system than what the high school has been built for, to have 5 cohorts up here at that level. So at some point, we really need to control school choice and be very thoughtful. And I know that that a number of our staff spoke of concerns, that the enrollment's grown a lot. And one of the conversations we've had in the last couple of school committee meetings is we've talked about having really less than a handful of school choice seats available here for new school choice next year. That we would be looking at the students that we currently have in the system as the ones that would be coming here. The great unknown is how many of those that typically have left us in the past are going to stay, and hopefully they all do. And that, so it's actually not the school choice in that's going to be an enrollment driver as we look forward in the upcoming years. It's school choice staying, or not leaving us, that is going to be the big unknown in terms of our enrollment increases, or that we're hoping for. And that's us doing what we want this district to do. We want the families to stay with us, not be leaving us. So the second piece up there is to look at going from an 8-block schedule to a 7-block schedule. And I agree. You don't want to go look at using a budget to go change your schedule. And when it comes to just the simple math of it, it is a luxury to go and run an 8-block schedule. We're one of the few districts in this area that has that schedule we could go with the 7-block schedule, and there's many schools around us and many very successful schools that have 7-block schedules. So the challenge is, we have to make a decision and go in a direction at some point soon. Otherwise, we're in a completely compromised situation of having to come up with a 7-block schedule at the last minute, and that's just going to create havoc for getting kids scheduled. And then the other piece up there is looking at middle school staffing. At the moment, we have a class size that is hovering right in the school committee guidelines for 5th grade. And the reality of our district is, in the past year and the years before that, at the end of 5th grade, we lose a significant number of students to Lighthouse Charter School. And we don't adjust the staffing. We maintain the same number of staffing per grade level in 6th grade and 7th grade as we do in 5th grade. So what we see is, we see class sizes that are right in the school committee guideline, and suddenly we see class sizes in 6th grade and 7th grade that are significantly below. So the reductions that would happen at the middle school would be to address staffing at the 6th grade and 7th grade so that the class sizes would be consistent between 5th, 6th, and 7th. And then the other area would be to look at the world languages at the middle school, which have extremely small class sizes relative to the other areas. And then the last little piece here is, I do think that if we look clerical staffing across the district, that we can find ways to come up with 1 FTE there. So all the staffing that would be on this page is what is in that $600,000 yellow cell from the previous slide. I also shared this with many, that if we look at just the data on that 7-block versus the 8-block schedule, there are things we can do that I would say from a data perspective can make sense. That shifting back to a schedule similar to what we had at Harwich High School could make sense in terms of academic success for students. Shifting from 9 sections per cohort at the elementary school to 8 sections could make sense for us over the long haul. But if we have to go and close the remaining $825,000 worth of gap, there are going to be decisions that don't make a lot of sense, that don't keep us within the school committee class size guidelines, and that's something that we need to understand going into this. So all totaled, here we're suggesting roughly a 10 FTE budget reduction, but we have to keep in mind that that's a reduction on top of reductions that have happened in the previous 2 years to bring the district together. So there were reductions that happened as central office staffs were getting consolidated in the first year of regionalization. Last year, as we brought our 2 high schools and middle schools together, we lost another 15 staff. This would have the total FTE reduction in the district at 35 FTEs fewer than when the 2 towns were operating independently. So the reduced staff budget, so this is no longer a level staff budget. The reduced staff budget is a $35 million budget, and it incorporates that 10 FTE reduction. What we do in this reduced staff budget is we now are applying some of the excess and deficiency. Remember, I said that we were roughly about $1.4 million in that reserve account. It's taking $600,000 from that account and applying it towards this budget. So you can do the simple math. That still leaves $800,000 in excess and deficiency. But it's important to remember that that's the only financial reserve that the district has left. So there's not a school choice account. If something happens mid-year, that's the only place we have to go. And it's important that we be fiscally responsible in terms of how we operate the district, to have some reserves at any point. So we get down to what the operating assessment would be, and then it goes to break out in terms of the 3-year rolling average to the two towns. And then we get to the punchline at the bottom. Now, how high is that above and beyond Prop 2.5? And that has us at $828,000 above and beyond the constraints of Prop 2.5, which ends up impacting our two communities. Chatham, it's $140,000 over Prop 2.5, which is 4.45% above what their assessment was last year, or in FY15, this current fiscal year. For the town of Harwich, it would be $688,000 above what their assessment, or above what the assessment was from this past year, or above 2.5% of what the assessment was for this past year, which is a 5.97% increase. And as I mentioned, there are still many great unknowns. So we've discussed as a school committee at the past executive session, offering to our teachers and our clerical staff an early retirement incentive. And if teachers were to take advantage of that, maybe that would help close the gap. Or narrow the gap, but it's not going to close the gap. For every teacher who elects for something, for an early retirement incentive, it's going to help close the gap by roughly $10,000, and it actually will help us in the out years too. So it's something that can be beneficial for several fiscal years. It narrows it. It doesn't close it. It can't close the gap. We don't have that many people to potentially retire to close the gap. The other, as I mentioned, we don't know what's going to happen from the state. So Chapter 70A is the state funding that you get. And the assumption, that the big unknown here is we're assuming it's going to be level with last year. But, at least from, what I was listening to NPR this morning, the tea leaves aren't reading that things are going to be level, but there's we're still months away from actually hearing what that number is. And then lastly, as I went into this still leaves a gap. This doesn't close it. There's that $828,000, and the wiggle there. There's not wiggle room to close that. It's either dip further into excess and deficiency, which I would argue isn't financially a sound move for the district to do, or touch staffing. There's, or have the towns and taxpayers close the gap for us. There aren't a lot of options to close. There's $1 million worth of pencil sharpening, and there's still a significant gap.
Are we ready to take a quiz on that, everybody? Understands those numbers? So obviously, we have a significant challenge. The board members have been living with this and working it through since early October, late September, with countless numbers of meetings. And this is the stage. We'll, as a committee, ask the superintendent to show us in the next couple of weeks what does the gap totally closed look like in the way of programmatic responses. But at some point, the committee needs to make a decision that will say, here's the line. Whether the line's 600,000 and that's a cut down from 2.2 million, and that's as far as we can go. Or $10 more, yes. Before we begin, and I know we'll never really reach a stage where no one likes to talk about 6-point FTEs at the high school or at the middle school. But at some point, there's a gap there that is, at least in good faith, I feel we have, in the last 3 months, entered into a discussion with the Howard side of the Finance Committee and the Selectmen. Nothing has yet been voted on. We've got several weeks ahead of making a decision what's best for staff, what's best for kids, and how can we achieve that. an override, someone meeting us, Howard, in the middle here with revenue coming from someplace else. Those are some of the options, or those options don't exist. And there are several small group meetings taking place to see if there is an opening there.
And I guess so people, understand the calendar timeline that's in the upcoming weeks. Monday evening would be 6:30, is that, is the Harwich Board of Selectmen Finance Committee meeting that will be, I'll be finally presenting this slide deck with an updated date on it. The following Wednesday, we have another school committee meeting. So next Wednesday, we have a school committee meeting. The following Wednesday, which is actually the Wednesday during February break, it's the only time that the two select boards could get their membership together. There's going to be a joint selectmen's meeting that I believe is going to be here in the high school library. And I believe that that's probably the time that I need to start articulating what closing the gap looks like. And I want to emphasize that, that this narrowing of the gap is something that I think we can still have a program that still keeps that promise. But I also know that as superintendent, I have to present a no override budget. I have to present a budget that's within the constraints of Prop 2.5 at some point and articulate this is what it looks like if the funding's not there. It's not a pretty picture. I can't go and say I can take what I've presented here and reduce by another roughly 16 FTEs and say, yeah, we're gonna have the ability to hit all the AP classes that Matt was talking about and have those offered. The ability to go keep things like the possibility of us rolling out things like lacrosse that we had families talking here last at the past school committee meeting. Being able to add at a time where we have to have great reductions, just not going to happen, and that's part of bringing these two towns together was to expand opportunities, not go backwards.
Mr. Russell.
Brian?
I just want to point out, so it's very clear, when Mr. Carpenter talks about presenting on the school vacation Wednesday, what a closed budget would, a no increase budget would consist of. That's not a reflection of anybody's, in this group's, I'm sure, pretty confident intention or Mr. Carpenter's intention. It's just that, the selectmen and the finance committee will ask what would be the result of closing that gap. It's not that that's a goal of ours, but it's going to be a question that's asked. And the reason you might want to be there to attend that meeting as well, if you're not on vacation, which I will be, is that would be another opportunity to let them know that the types of cuts that would have to happen in order to have a level budget are not things that you want to see happen. So just want to make sure that you understand that's another opportunity to make that clear to the selectmen and the finance committee of both towns at that point.
And then the budget hearing is we also have our annual budget hearing and I believe that's going to be the last Wednesday of this month. So 24th. And again, that's that will be the first time that we'll be likely having a full conversation about what really closing the gap looks like.
Thank you, Scott, Brian. The next topic under reports and discussion would be our school committee goals 2014-2015. I think in our packet we have a copy of that.
I think you have a copy in your packet, and I know that Nancy Scott has been doing some grammar correcting and has two friendly edits that I've highlighted in red to what's in your packet. One of them just clarifies when we have the statement to maintain educationally appropriate class size. It just reiterates what the school committee guideline is in there. And then the second one dealt with when we were talking about the curriculum development. We have as a committee been talking about maintaining and enhancing the program at the middle school and high school as we are bringing the district together. But I think in the conversation I had with Nancy, when we talk about what the potential budget impact is when I have to go and present something that closes the gap, we have to, as a school district, be mindful of maintaining at the elementary level as well.
If you found these goals, as you can recall, in the fall, we revised our 213, 214 goals and updated them and rolled 3 out of the 5 over based on the fact that we thought they were ongoing multi-year goals. And then the communication committee met at least once, and that was a couple of weeks ago before the snow began to fall. And there were some suggestions, and yet there was also some issues after the meeting, so we put off any vote. And here we now find ourselves just about to vote on the 2015 school committee goals, forgetting 14. So, yes, Jim.
I just wanted to, I believe if you go back, it says K to 12 instead of pre-K to 12. The curriculum development, the regions,
Yes,
should be pre-K to 12.
yes.
We're looking to, sorry.
Sharon, yeah.
So, I mentioned the last time, I think, that aside from the communications committee, nobody's really made, these were not developed by us as a committee, except for the communications and pulling some things over from last year. So I have several suggestions of things to modify this by or add, and I'll just pass them out. I tried to call some people and email, but for some reason it wasn't all working. I think you need one of these for the minutes. I hope I have enough. I didn't have a current copy of the, thank you. I didn't have a current copy of the new goals that were put up here, but I tried to tie those in as much as possible. For instance, on the regular fiscal long-range planning, supporting both educational excellence and fiscal responsibility, A, participate in joint meetings with the Selectmen Finance Committee, town administrators, finance directors to support transparency in the development of annual budgets. No change. B, develop a 5-year fiscal plan for the district, including 5-year perspective on technology and facilities maintenance projects. No change. The next one relates to this tonight a little bit. Maintain educationally appropriate size guidelines, and I added, and maintain broad curriculum when making staffing decisions. So I don't know if we want to take this one by one, or I'll
Well, actually, what I was hoping for is a vote, Sharon. You were a member of the subcommittee that reviewed this?
The subcommittee that was only talking about the communications section.
But I think we reviewed this 2 months ago as a committee?
We were presented this. No one made any comments about it. Now, I'm hoping that since it's the school committee goals, that I can continue and make these suggestions and see what the school committee feels about it. I won't read all of the ones that there's no change on, but the goal on regionalization, I'm suggesting on that one, instead of collaborate with town of Harwich to successfully repurpose the Harwich Middle School facility in a manner that supports conducive learning environment for Harwich Elementary School. I just expanded it a little bit, and that was to thoroughly assess and present and anticipate future generation needs for the Harwich Elementary School, including boundary lines, parking, traffic flow, safety, and other needs, and collaborate with the town of Harwich to successfully repurpose the Harwich Middle School facility in a manner that supports its conducive learning environment for the Harwich Elementary School. So that basically itemizes some things that have in some way already been done, but we've done that into what we need for today. We haven't done it in any kind of projection about what might the need be in 50 years. And that land, if we lose it, if we're just renting that land, it's not a problem. And I'm not sure if it's entirely thorough. Like there's, when we get into the middle school, I'll talk more about the middle school repurposing. The next one is to add an action item, present updates of school committee meetings on the progress and any changes of high school building project. We used to have those a lot, and now there's probably not too much going on, but there is something going on, and I only noticed that because I watched the selectmen's meeting last time, which I don't usually notice, and Ed McManus was presenting some interesting things on there that we haven't heard, so I think that would be helpful. For goal 3, let's see, so you have on here, under curriculum, within the middle and high school design process, maintain and enhance academic and extracurricular opportunities for children. I just didn't understand why we wouldn't put within the elementary school, middle school, and high school design process. So I added that. On the next one, to identify and create new means of recognition for Monomoy staff and students, and then I just added including encouraging all staff to share successes, because I know there have been a lot of successes that haven't gotten as far as Scott, I don't think. Because what happens is, if I have it correctly, is that the principals report to Scott what success is, and he lets us know. But there are other things going on that maybe if the teachers could toot their own horn a little bit and send it to the principals, or any other successes that are going on. I think we have a lot more than we hear about. The next one is on the design and implementation of a transition program to support student movement from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. I only added a multi-opportunity. Instead of like having one step-up day, to make sure it's something that's over a number of times. And I think this next one is already incorporated in this one that you put up here. Survey parents of all K to 12, but I now understand it probably should be pre-K to 12, for feedback on what they see as working in the middle school, at the Monomoy schools, and what they see as needing improvement. So that doesn't need to be done because it's already been corrected on here. Encourage one presentation at each school committee meeting from a building level administrator, teacher, or other staff. To put a safety thing in there, now that we're Monomoy schools instead of Chatham and Harwich, I put the safety of children and staff is the bottom line of the Monomoy schools, with the action step as review, update, and practice safety and crisis protocol to ensure student and staff safety. That may be being done, but we haven't heard anything about that. So, and this is the most important one, that is community. Community is not listed in any of the ones on this list here. I think since we've just come together, Chatham and Harwich, to make Monomoy, having community is probably as important as anything we have on here. So this says community, create a positive, inclusive, caring, and loyal Monomoy community. And after that, I put more fun, less burden with this goal. Yeah, that doesn't have to be in there, but the point is, I don't want it to be a lot of extra work for anyone. I think this could be fun things. Action steps, identify and support positive ways Monomoy students can connect with each other, staff, and Monomoy schools in general. B, identify and support positive ways Monomoy staff can connect with each other, the students, and connect with Monomoy schools in general. C, identify and support ways that parents and community members can connect with Monomoy schools, and Monomoy schools can connect with them. So you can take it apart if you'd like.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
Was that presented as a motion to amend what we've already done to include these things?
What is the pleasure? There could be a motion. Add all the suggestions, recommendations by Sharon. Take a look at the amended one that we asked the superintendent to clean up after we looked it over 2 or 3 months ago, or table the whole thing.
I have a couple. One is a question, being the newbie on here, what is the procedure around setting goals? Like, is there, and is there a certain timeline that they're usually done by?
Just speaking from my experience, which is relatively brief.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, and I don't think there's any other than common sense, there is no mandate from the state that says all school committees have to establish their goals. So at the beginning of each new school year, late summer, September, the committee would begin to identify what they would think to be reasonable, accomplished, generic goals that would guide us through the year, most of which would be articulated, accomplished by the leadership team and by the staff. And so last year we did that, we discussed them, we identified what they were, we voted on it, and we published it amongst ourselves, how far that went. The second year through was similar. We took what was, the chairman, moi, took what was last year's goals, reviewed them as a draft for us to kick around back in the early fall. Identified 1 or 2 or 3 that were clearly repeat goals, and polished it up. We had a session in the early fall that we discussed them, suggested that, what does this look like? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we asked Scott to polish up some with verbiage that would reflect this. That's what this draft a month or 2 ago looked like. There were some questions about a month or 6 weeks ago, specifically Sharon, about there were some things around community activity. Some was referred to the communication committee 2 or 3 weeks ago where they met or some met or didn't meet. And out of that came this final draft, so to speak. That's what this reflects. As chair, I thought we were ready to vote on this. Clearly, my sense was they were not my goals. We had submitted them. I got the ball rolling to discuss them. And then at some point, there was some amending them. Scott added 2 or 3 things along the way. So that's kind of the history of what would school committee goals look like and when are they generated and what's the intention. It's really stepping stones for a group of 8 people in this case to say, how do we do? Which would then, the next year, in a sort of a retreat format, you'd be able to look at this and say, gee, 2 out of 5 we accomplished. We need more MCAS study to get those scores up, or whatever it might be. So,
I'd also say, ideally, you're sort of coming out of the summer with established goals, and I think last year Last year, one of the challenges is with a new administration coming in, it was getting to understand the district, to establish the goals. So we were, let's say, going into the, roughly this time last year with, with establishing what those goals are, and ultimately those goals become a piece that a school committee is evaluating the superintendent on movement, and addressing those goals. And ideally, where we are now should hopefully by the end of next summer we're coming out with the goals and adopting goals for the 2015-2016 school year.
Brian?
Looking at what Sharon has presented, I think these are great and valuable things for the school committee to work towards. My only concern is more of a practical consideration, and that is that we're almost 2/3 of the way through the actual year of the year that we're preparing these goals for. So I think that we need to, my suggestion is that we need to adopt the goals that we have worked on up to this date, and I would make a motion to that effect. And I would ask that these be reconsidered when we work on the goals for the next year. Because I think there's only so many things we can accomplish, and the year is 2/3 over.
Sharon?
So, I agree with some of what you're saying, that it is February. But since we are here at February, why not, some of these things are like housekeeping things that are on the original one, like getting rid of the junk that we didn't want to take over from the new building. And that was something valuable. It wasn't a nothing job to do. Most of it's done now. And so some of those things are going to fall away. I'm thinking that if we adopt it, if we like these things, if there are particular things you don't like, that's one issue. But if there are things that you do like, why not put them on as a 1.5-year goal or a 2-year goal? Not that they all have to be done by this year. And matter of fact, most of these things don't say exactly what needs to be done at all. It is something we're like connecting our kids or connecting the staff. That's not going to happen from now till June. It's probably not going to happen as much as I'd like to see it at next June either. But at least there could be some real valuable things going rather than put it off completely, especially that one. Put that off completely, well, this is something we should be doing, and I see this as we are doing some of these things. The first step to something like that would be to write down what we're doing that's having the effect of bonding the kids or bonding the staff. Then look at those things and say, what is it about these things that's bonding? If we're having a workshop, that's not necessarily bonding. It could be. If we have a workshop and we have food and people are standing around eating food around there, that might be a little more bonding. But at any rate, just kind of looking at those things, and then the next step after that would be brainstorming.
I think, Sharon, just a privilege of chair, if something like that exists, I don't know if I said it. There's some nice input here. However, right now, I think it's untimely to the extent that it's February. And not that I'm that biased, but we've got so many issues that are facing us that this original final draft of 5 goals, to me as I read it, seems to capture some decent ongoing steps on our part to make a quality school system without really getting too complicated with all of the various details that in fact could be a subtext. So and that's my opinion. As a result, do I have a motion on the floor? Nance?
Second that motion.
Any further
I made a motion
discussion?
to approve the one that is already here.
If that's the motion.
I have a question.
And further discussion?
On,
Sharon?
there were a couple of different things that said, for instance, one, I made a suggestion that we change a couple things by tweaking them, not adding anything new, maintaining educationally appropriate class size, and maintain a broad curriculum when making staffing decisions. Pretty much what I saw on that financial thing that you put up there, it already, not on these goals, but on the financial thing, it kind of did say that that was part of what we were doing. So I think this is just falls into that.
Okay, any further comments?
Can I just say one thing? I think that there's so many great ideas in here, and just because they're not in the final draft doesn't mean that we can't do them, you know, but to keep this general and to just sort of get it voted on, you know what I mean?
What I'm
We can
hearing
still
is that
do these things.
not one of us, except the chair, had put one single thing in these goals, not one single thing for the responsibility from all the rest of us, and no one's willing to put any more input into this. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I thought we added some things the last time based upon some, actually, I thought we added some things based on your suggestions previously with regard to the fifth provision. Doesn't the fifth provision almost entirely represent things that you asked us to add before? That I somewhat rephrased?
Communication.
That's my
Well, on the fifth one, let me just say, I asked for the survey, and the communication committee, all of us agreed on the survey. That was the only, you're correct. That was the only thing that came in here that was mine.
If I could honor the motion on the floor, why don't we, just one clarification, Brian, your motion refers back to the final draft with the friendly corrections of Nancy did.
Correct.
I have a motion. I'd like to move it towards a vote. All those in favor of accepting that for the school committee's 214, 215 goals for this year, signify by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
That would be 7-1. Okay, thank you. Lightfoot's field trip.
You have to jump rope for us, too.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks. Is this the podium still available?
We're trying to make it the podium. Roll it out and...
All right, thanks.
What's that sweatshirt you're wearing there, Mr.
Oh, the Super Bowl champions of 2015, New England Patriots. Supporting, yeah. So, kind of like the New England Patriots, the Chatham Lightfoots have, over the years, come across a lot of successes. We started, this would be the 14th year that I've been coaching the team. There's been a few challenges with some changes this year, but we've averaged usually 20 students from the school districts. Obviously, it was the Chatham Public School District initially, and now the Monomoy Public School District, in which I've worked for the 14 years that I've coached the team. And over the last 9 years, as the team developed over its first 5 years or so, the team has elected by the jumpers on the team and the parents on the team to participate in the USA Jump Rope National event, which initially was held in Walt Disney World, and then about 3 or 4 years into it, they switched it to Texas and Galveston, so the team participated in those 3 years, and then after that it was moved to Long Beach, California, the past 3 years. So the Lightfoots have shown up to that for the past 9 years, not including last year. Last year they found out, before they had to make a decision, the parents and the children, that it would be moved back to Walt Disney. So they decided to hold off till this year so that they can have 2 years of fundraising for the event coming this year. So we have 8 signed up for that to go the whole way this year. And I believe we have 12 signed up to the regional event, which will be held at Nauset High School come March. So, if they qualify, as I do my best to make sure they do, then they will be signing up. They would hope to sign up for the USA Nationals this year, and that the date this year is more favorable to the team based on them being students, and it is Sunday, June 28th it would start. So the last day of school, if we have
Knock on wood.
2 more snow days.
Snow days, yeah.
If we
But
have
that's a
the
hop,
5
skip,
full
and a
snow
jump down
days,
the road.
that's June 26th, so that would still
Yeah.
allow them not to miss any school. In past years, actually, they sometimes would miss a few days of school, and it was approved. This year, they wouldn't have to miss any, and that would be an advantage of the dates this year. So as a tradition, each year, the Lightfoots would ask to come to one of these meetings and see if that would be approved as a field trip, that event. And somehow it was never me asking. There was always someone else doing it, but it was always approved. So thank you, past committees, for approving that as a field trip, and I stand here on behalf of the team to see if it could be approved again this year.
Any questions? Sharon?
I don't have any real questions, but I just think the Lightfoots are terrific. I think you and the team have done a great job over that many years. It's been a great physical fitness activity, a great wholesome activity. They've given the Brewster team a little run for their money, and so thanks.
Thank you.
It's all new to me, so how many Lightfoot Monomoy kids do we have on your program?
20 this year.
And they're all either in the Chatham Elementary, Howard
Yes,
Elementary,
we
Monomoy
have
Middle?
returners from last year that, like I said, some of the challenges were with mine now being at the middle school, Monomoy Middle School. The practice that used to be at Chatham Elementary School following the school day around 3 o'clock has now been switched to 7 o'clock in the morning at the Monomoy Middle School. And still with that change, we have 20 that signed up and are still with the team. Some of the draws.
And they
is-
practice all year round?
Yeah, all year round.
And then there's this major competition?
Yeah, so on top of that, we do, for the last 14 years, we've been part of the first night in Chatham. So this year, we performed 2 shows for the first night at the community center, and we draw a big crowd, and I think, that's rewarding for the students on the team. And, usually if there's 20 on the team, it's not unlikely for us to have 18 of 20 of them to sign up for that. They look forward to that every year, and it's a great way to present and showcase what they've been practicing all year up to that point. And then there's a trip in New Hampshire too that we've gone every year, probably for 13 years too, and that's the first Saturday in June, so that would be June 7th this year in Conway, New Hampshire. And in the past, we have also been invited to other schools, such as Walpole, Newton, to inspire schools there to start teams. So Walpole now has a team that we kind of inspired by going there and showing their school, giving them like a 40-minute demonstration, and then helping them at recess time, turning some ropes and teaching them about
Now, these youngsters, they're on the team, and the Lightfoots, that's their name?
Yeah, the Chatham Lightfoots was a name that when the team first started 14 years ago, that we kind of put a vote out there. We had the parents and the children, they had a worksheet, and then I said, we're looking for a team name, kind of like the Monomoy Sharks. And there were some suggestions.
In the age group, they start young, whatever elementary grade, but at some point they outgrow the program, and there's no really next level high school.
No heavy foots.
No. Very good, Brian, yes. So it's sort of a hop, skip, and a jump, and they're cheerleaders. And these are all young girls. All
Actually,
boys
it's
and girls.
co-ed. This year, it turned out it's all girls. We've had seasons where we had, maybe 5, 6 boys on the team. Yeah, so it's co-ed, and as long as someone wants to come back and jump with the team, the doors are open each year. So we've had 9th graders. We had one jumper, Savannah Chase. She was jumping on the team for 4 years, and I took a couple of years off, and then I don't know where she gives me an email and says, I'd like to come back as an 11th grader.
Cool.
So she came back as an 11th grader 2 years ago. And
Phil's daughter.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Good. He's my plumber, so. Good man. Well, do we need a vote?
Trying.
Nancy, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'd like to move to approve the Nationals competition in Disney World for the Lightfoots.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Could I add in the New Hampshire one to?
Well,
I should have added that initially.
We just had that discussion earlier, so yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, both Disney and will amend that. Thank you.
I amend my motion to
And my
include
second.
New
Barbara will
England.
not return again. She's already. Thank you.
Barbara's shaking her head right
G, subcommittee reports. Middle school repurposing.
There was one of the middle school repurposing gentlemen here, Mr. Gifford, who left after the teachers talked. So we don't now have anyone from the committee to talk. I'm an adjunct to the committee, or I'll use that word, I don't know what I am, consultant from the school committee or something. They put their RFI, request for information, out. They've had some input back from 2 housing groups and a number of other groups. I wasn't able, since they've had several meetings exactly at the same time we've had school committee, I haven't been able to be at the last, I think, 2 meetings. But I understand they're pretty much ready to do an RFP. So they're looking at requesting from the school to see if we could any more thoroughly than we've already done. Like, if we at one point said, I don't know, we needed X number of parking lots, and now over the time we have seen that we might need more, or if we're projecting that, Harwich East is suggesting that they're going to put 175 units up here for family-oriented housing. And if that happens, we'd have to build new schools. There would be the land for the school. So they're asking us to take into consideration what we need for today and any of the needs that we may project out for that land. And to let them know, because they're going to be putting the RFP out, request for proposals, and then they're going to be making decisions on a certain criteria of what's what. But this group is very caring about what the schools might need. And this is our chance. Once the RFPs go out, things kind of snowball, and that's that. So if there's anything more the schools need to say about what the needs are for the elementary school in the present time we're expanded, we need to identify that.
Right?
Mr. Carpenter, did you guys go and speak to them earlier this year, in fact, or was that the last committee? I can't remember.
I've spoken with the chair, and the chair is aware of the presentation and that Sam and I have made, and have the information, which is largely what the traffic flow needs are, what the parking needs are at the middle school. We had talked about whatever configuration happens next door, that we're going to need a little bit more parking if the parking, if the ultimate user at the middle school facility takes the parking lot offline, that we need to have access from Sisson Road to get to the building, and that the fields and back, we need for our physical education program, but also want to be good stewards for we've had the conversation that those fields should be maintained and used by Harwich Chatham Little League, that those wants and needs are addressed. What I haven't done is said, okay, here's the line in the sand that the boundary must be here, and I haven't done that, in part because I think we have to be sensitive to being good partners in the repurposing, and if there's some need for a little give on a boundary line here, to as long as we can have that flexibility, that it will work out. And we also have to keep in mind that we're tied to that building by poo and a sewage plant.
Not winning, you know.
And it's, you know, so we have a vested interest in understanding what the outflow is going to be, so that, and if they're gonna need their own plant, then we have to potentially make adjustments to our plant that, so it's.
Mrs. London wants to know how to spell poo. Is there an H at the end of that? Actually, I have a follow-up question. So, the RFIs have already gone out?
They've already gone out and come back.
And come back, okay. So it's too late for us to make sure that what's in there is satisfactory, you know.
No, they're saying that it's, the RFIs have not gone out. The RFIs have gone up, but the RFIs have come back, and everything's very vague, but very general. There's no specifications. Stafford, who was up there, and we had a town outcry against that, and Wise Living, and then there are several other different ones that are not related. You know, at one of the selectmen's meetings, they asked about these things, and there were numerous people that came up and spoke against the housing. And I'm not really clear what the other things are. As I said, I haven't been at the last two meetings, but, you know, if something, I don't know obviously I don't know what the school committee is going to vote on things. So, for instance, if that land is land that the school has access to now, if we were going to give any up, or if they were going to sell even the middle school rather than lease it or plow it down, then there would be a great limitation in what could be done in future decades or generations, where taxpayers are going to be, I might not be here to be worried about it, but there'll be people here to be concerned about where we get the land to expand to do these various other things. So that's there right now. So there's a number of people that are interested in that. At the last selectmen's meeting, they talked about land that's next to Red River Beach, and nobody has an interest in it, but somebody wants to buy it. But the selectmen decided that they wanted to hold on that, even though they have no plans for it, but just to hold on that right now, because they may in the future have plans for it. And so that's what they're talking about with us, about what do we see? Because other people are trying to pay their bills. They're not trying to look out for what might be the future for the schools. That's where we come in.
On that thought, Sharon, going back a year after the first, I guess the next RFP would be an RIP, let it rest in peace, because at some point, 50 years down the line, I would struggle to project out in a profit sort of way what are our needs. Right now, as I understand it, the loose line drawn was as close we could get to the middle school building and portables that existed at the time, and went all the way allowing the school to have the playing fields. And in the last 10 months, I haven't heard, even with this rejected Stafford housing plan, that would remain. And then the selectmen chose not to go that direction. But those playing fields in back seem to have been restored to the schools to use. So personally, I don't have any other suggestions that could either widen our ownership or look towards 50 years from now where we need another wing to the Sam School. I can't envision moving that to an argument where we could defend that. So if anybody else has something we could amend so that this committee feels, we're protecting ourselves in the future.
I have a concern sort of from the other side as a Harwich taxpayer who has a concern as to what's going to happen with that land. With the building. My concern is to make sure that the information in the RFP is sufficient so that somebody who's going to make a proposal can make a proposal that fits the situation. I mean, if the RFP is so vague that they're gonna get back a bunch of ideas that are just not gonna work, then nothing will have been accomplished. And this is their second go-around. So I'm wondering, do we have access to see how the RFP, is that a public document?
I'm sorry, the RFP is in the works, being developed. It's
Right.
not finished.
Okay, but I'd like to see that.
When that comes out, it's public information for everyone to see.
But what I'm wondering is, if the RFP is created by the subcommittee,
Yes.
and they vote on it, and it's done, and then we get to see it, then we don't have an opportunity to say, you know, you shouldn't put this in there, or you should consider putting this in there, because otherwise you're gonna get proposals that just don't make any sense. So
Yes, I agree.
if there was a way that we could be part of that process, and, you know, I don't know what that would mean, but I mean, if we could see the draft version before it's voted on.
I can speak for the last go-round.
Yeah.
The Harwich Town planner, you know, at various points in the iteration of, or the creation of that, you know, would reach out to me and you know, walk through, you know, what the thoughts, you know, what the thoughts are. You know, in fact, we had initially, you know, even thought of scenarios that could happen that would have all of the flow at Harwich Elementary coming off South Street. And through feedback from the community, there was a want to see a connection maintained through Sisson Road. So as that RFP was developed, the Sisson Road access was maintained in there, along with, you know, with provisions to add additional parking. So, you know, so I think the repurposing committee, as it had been, was very cognizant of our needs and incorporated our needs into that. And I have
You anticipate that to happen?
I feel that, you know, that when this new committee started, you know, the chair initially reached out to, you know, to Sam and I, what are your needs, and was very well versed. Had the document that Sam and I initially created to, you know, so that knew what the needs were for the, you know, for the elementary school as that process was beginning.
Yeah, I should add that the committee that's on here now is, none of the members are the same members as before. And they have been very sensitive about, very caring about the schools, and very appreciative about what Sam and Scott has provided before. When I voted personally on those boundaries, I felt we were voting on set boundaries. And so I don't know how much we feel about those set boundaries. And I don't know if there's any preference that the committee has on stating to that committee that we would prefer to have them lease it or plow it down or anything rather than sell the building. And just from a personal point of view, that would allow that land to be available in, several
Future
decades
needs.
in the future. It would be a savings for the taxpayer by not having to go out and find anything that would already be there. If it was rented, that's fine, because you can always, if you don't put a renting in, you can always, so that flexibility to me as an individual really is appealing. But, I don't know what the purview, and there may be people from, the buildings, especially Sam, that might have more knowledge than we would.
I can attest to the fact that a number of conversations I had with the co-chairs in the fall, from the time when they gave me the floor to kind of represent the needs of the elementary school, they were very, very sensitive, if anything, much more sensitive than the first committee was, to honoring our needs as a school and also the community needs. And when I went to the public hearing in December, again, the follow-up I got from that was, we heard you. In fact, we're looking for ways, because we see this site as a huge investment that the town of Harwich has, that we are very hesitant to release it to somebody else. In other words, selling it off is almost like a last resort. We want to see how we can invest, though there's an investment cost to that, in keeping it. I would rather see it become green space for future use development than anything. But we're looking at everything, and rest assured that everything you've put forward is on the table. And so I'll offer myself to come back up and talk some more. Or, nope, we got it. We've got everything we need, and it will reflect that. Now, I haven't seen any forms, and I would expect, just like last time, that when they're formulating that, they would reach out to us saying, have we missed anything? But at this point, I haven't heard back from them.
Thank you.
Okay, Sharon, thanks for the update. Next, item H, Superintendent's Report, Parent Conversations, Faculty Conversations.
Yeah, just, I briefly mentioned that I went around and spoke to for the faculty in each school, just to give them a budget update. We also had a forum for parents to come meet in this room at the high school, and next week we have a meeting in the afternoon at the middle school that will put a little blast out to parents and just get some feedback from them on how the middle school's going, but also alert them to some of the changes or the potential changes given the budget. The last little thing I wanted to share is we had every intention of being able to acknowledge who the next Chatham Elementary School principal was at the school committee meeting, but Mother Nature has not cooperated with that. Last year, Joan and Carla, who co-chaired 3 different principal searches, in my opinion, failed miserably in their job because their mission last year was to go and make a difficult decision for me. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't feel like I had a difficult decision in any of the searches. This one, I think they actually accomplished their mission. So we have 2 finalists for the Chatham Elementary School chair, Mr. O'Shea, who is our interim principal at and standing next to him is his bitter rival, Robin Hilton, who has been serving as our assistant principal here, or our assistant principal at Harwich Elementary School, and both have been doing a fabulous job in their roles and with the district, and it's, they're, in my opinion, they're both franchise players that you want to have around for the long haul. So.
Did you bring him in here tonight to arm wrestle?
Yeah, that's actually how we're gonna resolve this. No, we have a rescheduled visiting day schedule where Adam's visiting day at Chatham Elementary School, so to speak, is going to be this.
I doesn't have to go out of his way.
Yeah, will be this Friday, and just as we did our visiting days with each of the principal candidates that came through the district last year, there will be parents that will be chiming in, and staff that will be chiming in, and students that will be chiming in, and I'll take that written feedback along with with being part of those conversations, and hearing from the hiring committee themselves, and take that into consideration. Robin, her visiting day is on Monday. Although there is a storm that's supposed to be coming. In an ideal world, next Wednesday, I will finally be able to give someone a Monomoy jacket after Katie has me fill out whatever appropriate paperwork. Yeah, and after I write a check for the jacket. So anyway, I'm looking forward to Friday and Monday, and I will have a very tough decision this time around. That's it.
Good luck, gentlemen and lady. Thank you for staying a little bit later to hear that good news. We're down to action items, and I think declaration of surplus equipment seems to be the only one that we haven't acted upon. So I will rely on my vice chair to create a motion.
Before I start this, Mr. Chair, one question. The UPS system at Harwich Elementary School, is this something that has been used and reboxed, or is it boxes of uninterrupted power supplies just sitting there?
Stephen, which one is it? I'm sorry.
It's the UPS system, there's two, at Harwich Elementary School basement, which stands for uninterrupted power supply.
Right, no, they've been used, and I think that when I spoke with Stephen about it, you can't even get the batteries to back up the ones, they're obsolete.
And the
So
cost
the
to
back,
fix
Steve,
it?
picture of it in the back.
Yeah, well, I know, I wanted to know if it was dead in the water, or if it's just something that's
Okay.
there,
You're being
not
very
being
thorough.
used.
Thank you.
It's not uninterrupted anymore.
We have a motion.
I move that we declare as surplus equipment from Harwich Elementary School basement, a carpet cleaner and 2 UPS systems from Charlton Elementary School classrooms, 8 Dell CTR and 7 HP monitors. From Monomoy Regional Middle School, 13 desktop PCs, HP, 10 desktop PCs Dell, and 1 Compaq. Also a monitor and other assorted laptop batteries, a laser printer, color printer, an overhead projector, 2 and 1 Epson overhead projector broken.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.